Welcome back, folks. I hope you enjoyed that last room, and I hope you enjoyed your free beverage at Manna Cafe. I'm curious to ask what you got, but in the interest of time, I'll move on. Turns out, I'm not sure why I'm getting this in piecemeal, but turns out we have yet another birthday in our group. Mr. Dan Daly, I'm told. Is that you, sir? Happy birthday. So what are the odds? We have one day of tour, and we already have 3 birthdays on that single day of tour. I don't know if y'all coordinated that or what exactly, but hopefully you got the extra special free beverage in the Manna Cafe, Mr. Daly. So we are now in the second room focusing on Moses. Recall an hour ago we were in a different room where there was a statue and what looked like some bare walls. You got magic glasses that showed you otherwise. But that room was focused on Moses taking a stand. And the theme of that room, as it relates to faith, is faith to stand for your convictions. And that Moses' choice to do that, we feel in the museum, and we think the biblical narrative supports that, was the beginning of what became the Moses we know. It starts somewhere, and that was where it started, and he was willing to sacrifice the comforts of being in the palace and being within Pharaoh's safe, luxurious domain and identify with his people and, in fact, become one of his people, one with his people, I should say. So this room is the outflow of that room. This room is focused on the last 45 years of his life, where he really is the leader we know him to be. This room, as you can see, has got all manner of murals, and it's chronological from right to left as the Hebrew language works. So we see over here a painting we're going to really focus on. But beyond that, we see Moses gathered with the large crowd of Israelites as he is basically enlisting them to follow him. Any leader needs a followers, and so that's his. And we see him in front of Pharaoh. We see some of the plagues over here. We see the Exodus. We see this picture over here shows the painting of the doorposts for the Passover, and then ultimately with the most famous probably story that you can think of with Moses, the parting of the Red Sea. So all of this, again, doesn't happen but for the last room. Doesn't happen for Moses having enough faith to say, this is wrong, I'm going to stand with my people, with my God, and come what may. So let's take a look at the inscription first, and then we're going to walk through what's depicted here as we look at Moses. This room is themed lead. Faith to lead. All right, so with that, the inscription, as you can see on the wall, but if you want to look up in your own personal devices or Bible, is Hebrews 11, verses 27 through 29. Can I get a reader to show your hand so we can hear from you? All right, right over there. Hang on one second, sir. Sure, we're all there, including a microphone. All right, Hebrews 11, reading verses 27 through 29. Yes, sir.
By faith, he left Egypt, not fearing the king's anger. He persevered because he saw him who is invisible. By faith, he kept the Passover and the application of blood, so that the destroyer of the firstborn would not touch the firstborn of Israel. By faith, the people passed through the Red Sea as on dry land, but when the Egyptians tried to do so, they were drowned.
All right, thank you very much. So this, as I said, the pictures here depict much of what we just heard in that inscription. But I wanted, as I said, to focus on the first picture, the earliest of the chronological pictures, this picture here. And if you take a close look, and I know some of you maybe aren't in the best view to see it, but if you take a close look, the artist in this picture, this painting, not a photo, obviously, this painting is depicting a fearful Moses. And you can see as he is facing the viewer, facing the artist, facing us, essentially, you can see, you should see, if you look closely, and when I leave you, if you're 10 minutes, I would encourage you to come and take a closer look at what the artist did to try to depict that fear. But there's a clear fear in Moses' face over here. And clearly he's talking, and he's a talker with mouth and with hands. You can see that as he's doing this. That painting is called Protest. So let's read more about that. If you can go to the book of Exodus, chapter 3.
Did you say protest?
I did say protest, yes. Thank you for clarifying. Exodus chapter 3, let's read about the narrative that the artist is depicting within this painting. We've got a little bit of a longer passage. Let me see perhaps if I can get 2 volunteers. We're going to be reading Exodus 3, verses 1 through 10. Can I see a hand or two hands at one table would be better. We're going to come over here, if you'd be so kind, Mr. Microphone. I think your name's Chris, right? I heard that earlier. All right, Chris, and then the other gentleman with the, what was your name, sir?
Bartholomew.
Bartholomew. Okay, you're going to pick up, Chris, you do 1 through 5, and Bartholomew 6 through 10.
Very good, sir.
Yes.
Now Moses was keeping the flock of his father-in-law Jethro, the priest of Midian. And he led his flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of the midst of the bush. He looked, and behold, the bush was burning, yet it was not consumed. And Moses said, I will turn aside to see this great sight, why the bush is not burned. When the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses, he said, here I am.
Verse 5.
Then he said, do not come near. Take your sandals off your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground.
Thank you. Bartholomew, take over at 6, please.
And he said, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have heard their cry because of their taskmasters. I know their sufferings, and I have come down to deliver them out of the hand of the Egyptians, and to bring them up out of the land to a good and broad land, a land flowing with milk and honey, to a place of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And now, behold, the cry of the people of Israel has come to me, and I have also seen the oppression with which the Egyptians oppress them. Come, I will send you to Pharaoh, that you may bring my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. So what's the essence of the message that God is communicating in this passage to Moses? The Cliff Notes version.
I have heard, and I will intervene on behalf of the people to give myself glory.
Oh, okay, that's a pretty deep one. What did he hear? What did God hear? What's the issue here? What is he planning to do? All right, this is not a trick question. All right, slavery. So they're enslaved. They've been enslaved for hundreds of years at this point. And God is saying, I've known, I've heard, now is the time for my glory, as Chris indicated. I think that's sort of implied versus stated. But he's about to act. And this is good news, right? And Moses is hearing this, and you would think Moses would be, yay, God, this is outstanding. Time, I can't wait. Not quite his reaction. Let's get the next reader to read verse 11. Now we're going to kind of walk a little slow pace through the next several verses, and I'm sorry, I'm going to have the microphone man Mark, the guy with the camera. Another reader. I had a hand over here. Yes, ma'am, Tessie.
Reading just 11?
Just 11.
Okay. But Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?
All right. So first off, Moses' initial response is, who am I? Why is he asking that question? Or what is that question, what issue is that question trying to address? Maybe is a better way to say that.
A number of things. Fear, or feel like they're not equipped,
Okay.
insufficient.
Good, excellent. Those are great answers. So clearly it speaks of fear, I think. Fear's the undertone of that. You use the word insufficiency or inadequacy, basically saying, of all the people, did you mean to talk to me, or you're talking to someone behind me? I mean, he's like, well, why would I be the one you choose? Who am I to go in front of Pharaoh? Because again, at this moment, he is, he has fled Egypt. It's been 40 years, so the new Pharaoh presumably was kind of his peer at the time. Pharaoh's true kid versus adoptive kid in Moses. So I've always seen and kind of envisioned that the Pharaoh at the time is not the guy he left 40 years ago. That guy's gone, and now his son is on the throne, and probably, somewhat relatable to Moses in terms of age, in terms of all that. So he's being asked to go back to Pharaoh, regardless of who's on the throne, who's on the seat of Pharaoh. Pharaoh is obviously a hugely powerful individual, and they're in their country is hugely powerful, and they're ruling lots of folks, including these Hebrews. So the task is go, you, Mr. Nobody, go to the most powerful person that you can think of and bring this message from the Lord. I mean, that's a pretty heavy assignment. And Moses' initial reaction is, me? Who am I to do that? All right, God's response. Can I have, ma'am, Tessie, if you could read God's response to that question? Verse 12.
And God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God on this mountain.
All right, so how does God address the concern that Moses raised in his question?
Says he'll be with me.
It's kind of like, it doesn't matter who you are. I'm going to be with you. I can pick whoever, and I'm picking you. So don't worry about your credentials or adequacy. I'm going to be right there with you. It's really me doing it. You're just going to be the human representative of my work, kind of to go with the for his glory comment earlier. All right, so that's issue number one. Moses raises, God responds. Moses is not done. We have more issues ahead. Can I get somebody else to be on cue to read verses 13 and 14? Oh, yeah, please, yes, pause along the way.
So it's curious to me that he said, I will be with you, and he said, and this will be the sign that is, when you have brought them out, and you're here at the mountain, and it's like, you mean he doesn't give them a sign before? He has to, I guess by faith, lead them out. You know, that's a big ask.
It is, and I'm glad you see that, because really this is a big ask. And again, this is a part of the story. I would suggest probably most folks who know of Moses don't know so much about this kind of initial interaction with God. We see Moses the hero, and Moses the guy that's dropping the 10 plagues through God and, parting the seas and pillaging the Egyptians as they leave and all that. We don't see this Moses so much when we think of Moses. It was a huge ask, and his initial inclination, at least the first one, is I'm inadequate, and that's interesting, you're right, the timing of the sign. I mean, we're going to see later on that there are more signs, but at least the initial thing is when all this is done, you're going to come back here, and that'll be the sign that I'm with you, as I say so. All right, somebody to read verses. So we're going to read one at a time, so if you could read verse 13. So issue number 2, Moses is not done just yet. Yes, ma'am.
Then Moses said to God, if I go to the people of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask, what is his name? What am I supposed to say?
All right, interesting. What's the issue that's addressed here in this next question from Moses? Yes?
His relationship to the Israelites, which he has been away from. He's been out in the backcountry for umpteen years with sheep.
Yeah. Excellent. Good. And again, not so much his identification, but who else's? God's. So yeah, the picture you paint is a good one. Moses is going to show. So the first issue is like the overall task. Moses is seeing the big picture, and why would you choose me, God? Then it appears Moses is thinking through that. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a representative of the Israelite people. I'm going to have to go to them and essentially enlist them to authorize me to be their voice. And they don't know who I am. I'm going to show up, and they're going to say, well, who the heck are you? Trust me, I'm a Hebrew, and God told me to do that. Well, if God told you to do that, how do we know? Who is God? What do you say? These are the this issue to me is conjuring up these kind of thoughts that Moses is having as he's envisioning this leadership task, this big ask. One, am I even qualified to do this? I need to get the support of the people whom I'm apparently going to be representing in front of the most powerful person on the face of the earth, and they need to let me do this and not kill me or reject me or whatever else. So he's kind of thinking about this, and he raises this issue. If you can finish, any more thoughts on that? Yes, sir.
The number, I'm sorry, I'm struck by who shall I say you are to them? There's a host of entities going around in Egypt that parade themselves or as worshipped or regarded as deity. And so I'm not saying that Moses is implying that Yahweh is one of them, but I think that kind of is, we got a bunch of candidates in Egypt that say they're all powerful. Who are you? Or
Good.
what's your name?
Good.
that I may represent.
Good. Yeah, great point. You know, Egypt, like most other cultures at the time, and many even today, were polytheistic, meaning many gods. They would have a god of this and a god of that, a god of the harvest and the sun and whatever else, and all manner of things. And so while the Hebrew people are called to be monotheistic, have one God, Yahweh God, they've been living now for hundreds of years in a polytheistic environment, and perhaps some of the questioning that Moses is anticipating is being their people tainted by society, and trying to figure out which God do you purportedly represent so we can figure out whether they want you to be our leader or not. I had another comment over here, I think. No? Yes, sir.
I'm just thinking, maybe he did not trust the people of Israel because he was betrayed before. And when we talk about fear, maybe he feared the Pharaoh, the Egyptian, but at the same time, he did not completely trust his people. And I'm just thinking, the Israelite people, how do they see Moses? Because he grew up here, he was raised in the past. So did they see him that he is working for Pharaoh? I don't know.
That's a great insight, and I hadn't really thought about that. That's a really deep insight. The fear may not have been stepping in front of the most powerful person, but representing a group of folks that who all they know could betray him or sell him out or rebel. Excellent. I hadn't thought of that.
But yeah,
Sir.
But Moses had been in the wilderness for 40 years, and all these people that probably didn't even know him.
There's a good chance, but maybe he's not aware of that. Maybe he's concerned that there might still be some remnant of folks who remembered this guy that supposedly is an Egyptian, but now he's saying he's one of us. I think you're right, but I also think that that's a fair point that he might have that fear, whether it's a rational fear, whether it would be realized or not. I do think the 40 years probably put most of that as ancient history, but a guy who's concerned about this big ask might be thinking about such things as even the fear of the people he's going to represent. Interesting. Really good insights, folks. Thank you. Any others? All right, so that's the issue that's raised. That's issue number 2 that Moses raises. I think in an effort to anticipate and respond to what the people might say when he shows up and said, "Hey guys, I'm Moses, and God told me I'm going to do this on your behalf." What? Who are you? Why should we trust you? Who sent you? What is all this? And God's response, yes, ma'am.
God said to Moses, "I am who I am." And he said, "Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you."
Okay, boom. So that's God's answer. Again, it's not so much focused on Moses. It's focused on God. Moses' question blurs the line. Both of his questions blur the line. God's answer to both questions focuses on him. I am with you. Don't worry about the other stuff, essentially. All right, we think we're done? No, we're not. Chapter 4 of Exodus. If I can get somebody to be prepared to read verse 1 and then a couple of verses thereafter. Show me by hand. Maybe someone at this table over here, this front table. Can I get a volunteer over here? All right, very good, sir. If you would, please. Hang on, I was referring to the microphone, not to the reader. Exodus chapter 4, verse 1. So now issue number 3.
Ready?
Yeah, I'm ready, yes.
Moses answered, "What if they do not believe me or listen to me and say, 'The Lord did not appear to you'?"
All right, stop right there. All right, so what's the essence of the next issue Moses raises? Okay, so yes, so God, I show up and I introduce myself and I got to tell my backstory perhaps, and they say, "Who sent you?" And I say, "I am." You know, everything you tell me to do. What if they say, "We don't care. We don't believe you. We don't know you. Who are you? We don't like you." You know, whatever, any manner of things they could say that is essentially, you know, disagreeing with this idea that he is indeed authorized by God and they should submit to that. I think a fair question. I mean, I think in light, again, of the backstory that we know, him being a basic stranger to this group of folks who's going to show back, and some of them might remember, but for over the 40 years, probably the vast majority won't know who this guy is. Why should they believe him? Why should they believe God spoke to him? What if they don't believe, is his question. Because he can't lead a group of folks that are not willing to submit to his leadership. So he's kind of thinking on those issues. And God has an answer for that one. If you can read verses 2 and 3, then I'm going to have you do one more,
The
sir.
Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" "A staff," he replied. The Lord said, "Throw it on the ground." Moses threw it on the ground, and it became a snake, and he ran from it.
Keep going.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Then the Lord said to him-
Hang on. I'm sorry. You read verse 3. And go to verse 6.
Then the Lord said to him, put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand into his cloak, and when he took it out, the skin was leprous. It had become as white as snow.
All right, perfect. So I'm skipping just for the sake of time. So God delivers now a couple of signs. Later on in the dialogue, the lady over here said, it seems unfair that the sign, comes after the fact. So now God is basically, how is God answering Moses' question? What if they don't believe?
Reassurance by intervention into humanity with things only the Most High can do.
Good. Excellent point. And at first, it seems to me, and you can grab a seat now, thank you. And first, it seems to me that this answer is speaking to Moses. His question is, what if they don't believe? And God says, throw down your staff, and it becomes a snake. God says, put your hand in your vest, and he does, and it comes out and is diseased. Who is he talking to at that point? He's talking to Moses. He is really giving Moses the full awareness and all the evidence Moses could possibly need that God is indeed with him, that God is indeed the one talking and then giving you this directive. Later he says you're going to show some of these things to the Israelites, but I find it interesting, we in the museum find it interesting that when Moses raises the question, what if they don't believe, God seems to be doing all to persuade Moses to believe. Here are the things.
The same thing?
Well, that was my next question, and you just robbed me of it. Thief! Get him out of here. So why would God answer Moses' question about them by demonstrating himself to Moses? Ignore that he just said something. Pretend it's a brand new question you never thought of before.
Moses had the human doubt.
Clearly.
He had to clarify that to Moses.
Good.
But God needs him to come with confidence.
Good as well.
So that's the part of he has to come confidently, and that's going to give him that confidence.
I think both of you are spot on. God, clearly, by Moses asking these questions, and there's still some more to come, by the way, but as as Moses is asking these questions, he is revealing fear and doubt and concern, which clearly is a lack of confidence, and God is seeing that. We know of God that he knew that long before the bush started burning, long before Moses was the guy. He knew this was coming because God can foresee all things, including what we're going to do in 6 years from now. So God knew it, but he was working Moses through this process, and part of the process was to persuade and convince Moses that God is who he says he is, that God is capable, and that God is indeed the one giving the commission. And if Moses can buy into that hook, line, and sinker and be confident, then a lot of these other things become much less concerning. The people are more likely to believe if they can see and sense in Moses' confidence. The people are less likely to question and quibble if this person that shows up just has an aura of God about him. And some of that, I think, comes about by throwing down a staff and it becomes a snake, and pulling out a leprous hand and then sticking it back on your vest, and it comes out clean and healthy as it should be. Question or observation?
Fully on board with what God wants him to do. It makes him to present to the people much more powerful, because he now has a solid belief that he is working for God, and he's not wondering if he really is. Now he's totally convinced. I think that's going to project to the people he's trying to talk to.
Agree. Well said.
Well, isn't the snake the sign of the Pharaoh? And so the fact that he starts with that, like he started at the top and said, okay.
I hadn't connected the snake, why the snake is for this one thing. That's interesting. And we know later on in the story that and I don't know exactly how this happens, but that Pharaoh's people can do some of these same things, including but Moses' staff eats their snake staff. But yeah, that's a good, I hadn't thought about the animal linkage to the culture of the Egyptians. Good. Other thoughts, questions? Yes, sir.
You used the term earlier on. The term that you used was enlist.
Okay.
If you think about how Yahweh is interacting with Moses here, allowing his doubt, reassuring his doubt, reaffirming his convictions to strengthen him and embolden him for the purposes of loyalty. and
Believing loyalty even.
believing loyalty, and to enlist the people to have such believing loyalty, which also coincides with confidence and gives Yahweh glory, praise, and unquestionable, solid confidence and belief. The votes of just, I will not betray this, because this is true, Yahweh is true. Enlist.
Great, yeah.
What a fantastic.
Just came out accidentally. Thank you for being so attentive to my word selections. Excellent. Other thoughts? Yes, sir. Patrick, the guy got you a free beverage last hour, so yes, sir. You're our hero in this room. Still drinking yours, good.
Be careful with it. It likens it to salvation as well. Each individual has to know the gospel and believe it. And people struggle sometimes with their salvation and their faith, and they question and they doubt. But I think when God is gracious and long-suffering, even after we're saved, if you're saved, you're eventually going to come to the knowledge that you know, that you know, that you know He is real.
I've written these things so that you may know that you have eternal life. Yeah, as John said. Excellent. I think that's a great connecting of the dots. Yes. Lee.
I just would sum it up by saying that God and Moses were working on a relationship, a belief in one another. Moses, I don't know how strong his belief in Yahweh was prior to the bush and even after the bush, because obviously we see here that the questioning continues on.
It does.
And we're not talking about one person seeing another. This is still ether talking to a human being.
Right, a voice. Mm-hmm.
Voice. And for us, it's the same thing. I mean, it's to accept Jesus or accept the Lord is the same. And he struggled the same way we have.
Great. Remember that thought, because that's one of the summation points, is to kind of equate our experience, at least with this part of Moses, the protest part of Moses, this painting. Excellent insights. We're not done. Chapter 4, verse 10. Can I get somebody else to read the next round of issue that Moses raises? Show me by hand who you are so that we can have a microphone. All right. Free beverage guy is raising his hand, so we're going to let Mr. Patrick take that. If you could read chapter 4, verse 10.
And Moses said unto the Lord, O my Lord, I am not eloquent, neither heretofore, nor since thou hast spoken unto thy servant, but I am slow of speech and of a slow tongue.
All right, pause right there. So what's the issue that Moses is raising now?
I got to stutter.
Yeah. It kind of goes back to the first issue, why me? So now it appears he has progressed from why me, why would the people ever follow me? And maybe he's now at the point of envisioning himself in front of Pharaoh and looking at himself and thinking, I don't speak good, and I don't know that Pharaoh's gonna, listen to me with respect or heed me because of my lack of confidence, lack of eloquence. I'm just not good at this. So yet another issue Moses is raising up. Recall the answer. We're going to read it, but you recall the answer God gave to that one?
Who made your mouth?
Well, but there was also another answer. As brother, yes. So yeah, basically, don't sweat that. All right, if we can go back to Mr. Patrick for verses 11 and 12, God's response.
And the Lord said unto him, Who hath made man's mouth? Or who maketh the dumb, or deaf, or the seeing, or the blind? Have not I the Lord? Now therefore go, and I will be with thy mouth, and teach thee what thou shalt say.
All right, perfect. And actually, you're right. Sharon, you're correct. The idea of the brother comes in a little later because Moses has one more thing to raise. And this one is the clearest. In case, the prior issues that were raised were too subtle, in case God wasn't reading between the lines, Moses' next one is just as clear as I'll be. I'll read it. Moses said, Lord, please send someone else. That's great. I've given you 6 outs and you have not taken a one of them. Please just send someone else. I can't be any more clear. I'm inadequate. I can't speak. They're not going to trust me. They're not going to know that I'm with you. I mean, all of that stuff, as logical as that seemed, and I want to give, maybe he really was thinking through that. I think all of that was the first goings and the second, third, fourth goings for the ultimate goal of I want out. This is a big ask. This is daunting. I am intimidated. I'm afraid. Hopefully you're going to maybe see that I'm not so eloquent and you change your mind and pick Aaron or somebody else. Maybe you're going to see that the people won't believe me because I've been outside of their realm for 40 years and you're going to pick somebody else. Maybe you will look at me when I say I'm inadequate and you say, yeah, you know what, you are. Let me find somebody else. He didn't do that on any of those times. God kept saying, I'm with you. I'm going to do it. It's me. Go. Stop with your questions, essentially. And then Moses finally, just in voicing perfect clarity, I don't want to do this. Send somebody else.
But he grew up in the household and probably saw people come to court and people speak to Pharaoh, and it went good or bad.
Good point. Maybe he's envisioning, the ones that went south. It's like, ooh. Yeah. I've seen that. When it didn't go well, that guy lost their head. I don't want to be that guy. Excellent. So Moses raises that. I'll read again just for the sake of time and our cameraman. Here's the Lord's response. And this is a very candid recitation here. Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses. That's interesting, isn't it? I don't want to read any further. Just pause for a second. Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses. That's what we read next when Moses says, please send someone else. I'm not sure what to make of that necessarily, but a candid insight into, God is long-suffering, as this gentleman said earlier. But there comes a point when God, reaches a limit. We saw that rooms ago when God told Noah, you're going to build a big boat that doesn't make any sense because I've basically had it with humanity. We're going to hit the reset button and you're going to be the starting point for humanity 2.0. And now we have this dialogue with Moses where God at the end now, when Moses essentially says, here's perfect clarity. I don't want to do this. Please don't make me do it. Now God's angry. The passage says as much. All right, let me continue on. Then the Lord's anger burned against Moses, and he said, isn't Aaron the Levite your brother? I know that he can speak well. And also, he is on his way now to meet you. When he sees you, his heart will rejoice. You will speak with him and tell him what to say. I will help both you and him to speak, and will teach you both what to do. He will speak to the people for you. He will be your spokesman. You will serve as God to him. Take the staff in your hand, and that you will perform the signs with. All right, so I didn't read that very well. But God said, basically enough. I'm going to send Aaron, your brother. He speaks fine. Recall that for the rest of Exodus, at least my recall of the rest of Exodus, at least the dialogue with Pharaoh, Aaron is with Moses, but Moses is the one doing the talking. If you go back and look at all the dialogue and the 10 plagues, and each time it's Moses that comes to Pharaoh and say, let my people go to worship, and then Pharaoh says, get out of here. It's never Aaron comes to the people. So God in this last line of protest, when Moses clearly says, I just don't want to be this leader. I don't want to do this. And God's angry. And he says, I'm gonna send Aaron, your brother, as your helper. Enough with you. Stop the questions. And they go off. I mean, the rest of the story is Aaron plays a role, but he is not the spokesperson. Aaron is a guy in the shadows, by and large, except for when he falls on his face a few times. Anyhow, so that is what this painting protest is trying to summarize. This whole dialogue. Moses protesting when God says, I've seen, hi Moses, this is Yahweh God here. I have seen and heard of my people's misery, and I'm now ready to do something about it, and you are the guy that is going to be my instrument to do it. And Moses protests in response to that, all these various things. Thankfully for Moses, thankfully for humanity and us, Moses' story doesn't end with protest. It does have these other paintings. It does have the episodes that follow, the episodes that show Moses as the leader that we know and recall him to be. The Moses who does come in front of his people and does earn maybe the wrong way, does get their support. They do allow him to be their voice. He does go to Pharaoh. Recall that initially that didn't go well. Remember, the first part was, let my people go so that they can worship, and Pharaoh's, I forget exactly, but the end result of that is, you know what, you're going to still make the same number of bricks, but we're not going to get you hay anymore. You got to go find your own hay to make your bricks, and life got worse for the Israelites that first encounter after Moses was their leader, and yet they still allowed him to be their leader. So God still worked in that relationship, that fundamental relationship. That was a great time for Moses to have valid fear of the Hebrews, that they would revolt against him or do harm to him. But God was in that situation and addressed that very realistic concern that he may have had, or if not, he surely had then, to allow the people to continue to submit to Moses' leadership, allow Moses to still be their voice, to go back to Pharaoh a second time, and a third and a fourth, and as we know, the multitude of times until finally the Passover, which we depict and we see over here. Was there a comment? Did I talk over a hand that was going to? Okay. All right, so again, the point of this room, the theme of this room, as we said, is lead. And we think of Moses, we often do think of him as the leader, the great leader, a well-deserved member of this hall of faith who took the Israelites. God did it, no doubt, but God used Moses as this powerful human tool to take his people out of the bondage of Egypt for the hundreds of years they had been there, take them to the promised land through all manner of obstacles, one of which was the Red Sea that parted because Moses, as you see in this painting here, was authorized by God to stand and raise his staff. The Israelites walked on dry ground, what used to be the bed of the sea. The Israelites got to the other side, Moses got to the other side, the Egyptians followed in hot pursuit and drowned. Then we see, we're not depicted here on these walls, but we know the story includes Moses leading them to the promised land. We know the sad part of that initial encounter where the 12 spies were sent in. 10 of them, all 12 of them said the land was fantastic. 10 of them said, yeah, but the people are monstrous and it's too scary, we can't possibly. 2 of them said, doesn't matter, God's with us, let's go. The people chose the 10 and not the 2, so Moses got to lead them for longer than he planned, 40 years in the desert until the naysayers died off. Moses was used of God to deliver manna to the people when they were saying, you know, did you bring us out here to die of thirst and not of hunger? Moses was used of God to deliver water from rock and other supernatural things that only God could do. Moses has clearly, appropriately been placed in this hall of faith. But again, the Moses that we know, all those things started with the Moses that we've just been discussing and dissecting. The Moses of great doubt, the Moses of fear, the Moses who wanted nothing to do with God's directive, felt inadequate, was concerned about the response of the people. All the things that we saw in that passage that we see hinted at and depicted by this picture, that's the Moses that began and ended here with the parting of the Red Sea and the Israelites walking through. So why am I going through all this? Why are we talking about this? Because every room in the museum, including this one, is not intended to celebrate the faith that was demonstrated by people of the past, but is intended to inspire similar faith in the people of the present. It is intended to inspire faith of the museum visitors, you all, and the museum docents, me. Intended to give us the insight into some of these episodes of faith so that when and if our moment comes, when and if God were to knock on our door and say, Blaine or Patrick or whomever, I've called you to do this big ask, to lead this effort, to do whatever else. Hopefully taking a look at this episode gives us a little more confidence in God, a little less reliance on confidence in self, and a little more willingness to have the kind of faith that it would take to lead. So as we look at this, let's get some talking points, and then I'm gonna step out of the way and let you explore this room for 10 minutes until we come back to our next room. But before we do that, let's look at a few lessons that we gleaned from Exodus chapters 3 and 4. Let me start with the first. Well, let me stop. Let me let you all fill in. What are some takeaway lessons that you learned today or already learned previously from the Exodus 3 and 4 passage, the dialogues between God and Moses? What are some takeaways that you apart from what we've discussed so far? Anybody want to start that? It's intentionally a vague and not really well-worded question, but let's prime the pump and get rolling. Yes, Sharon.
Well, I was saying, let's make this personal.
Exactly.
I mean, because like, issue number one, why me lead? You know, why me be the leader?
Right.
You know, God wants you to, let's just say it's your neighbor next door. You know, somebody that you maybe have a casual relationship with, you know, they live next to you for 10 years and you wave at each other and you all know each other, you know,
Right.
whatever, but why me be the one to go speak to him? You know, what if he asked, you know, what if he don't believe what I'm saying to him? The same questions Moses has. What if, you know, God, I can't speak. What if he asks me a question I don't know the answer to? I think you need to send Joe. Joe lives next door, and Joe's more of a Christian. And
Yeah.
his faith is more obvious outwardly than mine is. Yeah, I really think Joe needs to go, not me. So, I mean.
Exactly. Yes. Perfect.
Personal. I mean, the same way we do the same.
Yes.
We do the.
Yeah. Here's the six reasons.
About it at the moment.
Right.
Like, no, God's
Yeah.
not telling me to do that.
Yeah. Right. I didn't hear that. I'm not listening.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Excellent. So in the kickstart, so first takeaway in light of that, which yes, thank you Sharon. This episode of Moses translates in 2025 to us with our neighbor, our coworker, our child, our whatever. We're going to have the opportunity likely to have a similar situation where God commissions us to do something, maybe not as magnificent as lead a people of 1 million out of captivity, but maybe it's to witness to that neighbor whom you have a casual relationship with, but other than getting their mail every now and then when they're out of town, you don't really talk to them all that much. So one of the takeaways, in light of that, one of the takeaways that we saw in this passage, and I think is a general takeaway, is God selects the people he commissions. God selects the leaders. It wasn't Moses' ambition to be a leader. It was God's ambition to have Moses be his tool. And that's not to say we shouldn't have ambition to witness to our neighbor or whatnot, but when we're in those moments and we sense the Spirit is giving us that directive, it's because God has made that selection, as he did with Moses.
And God didn't select Joe.
He didn't.
Next door.
He selected Sharon for a reason. Sharon may not know what that reason is.
Yeah.
He could have selected Joe.
Yeah.
He chose Sharon.
Joe's lived on the street as long as I have.
I mean, and Joe is great, and Sharon feels like she's not, but really she is. Yeah. Yeah, sir.
He didn't choose Aaron either.
He didn't. The well-spoken Levite who maybe, could have been a better voice for the people and known by the people. Exactly. So that was...
Deep down, at some point, you have to surrender. There's got to be that element of surrender, because I think at some point Moses probably thought, okay, I'm going to throw all this out, and I continue to come up with excuses. It's not working.
Right.
So at some point, you just need to surrender in a, I don't want to say a happy way, not in a negative, like, okay.
Doggone it, God, I'll do it.
You showed me all, and so yes, I should be honored that you have chosen to do this.
Oh, that's great. A transition from self-focus to God-focus and realizing the honor it is that you've been chosen. Out of the Joes and whoever else that could have been chosen, you were the one that was chosen. Sir, you had your hand up.
To kind of tag along on what the lady said, surrender to Yahweh also strengthens the lack of compromise to everything else. I will surrender to Yahweh, and I will yield nothing to anyone else. It both strengthens and affirms.
Excellent. Great. Yes.
I think it
Tiffany.
shows that God is willing to reassure people in their doubt, as long as your heart is still willing. Because the second that Abraham's like, I'm not willing, is when God says, okay, I'm mad. But I think it shows that God is, kind and is willing to say, let's build your confidence a little bit up, to do what I need you to do.
Excellent. Agree. And one of our rooms coming up, the room that focuses on Gideon, is another example of that. We'll look more into that episode. But yes, I think in this episode we see a patient God who is willing to hear the questions and respond lovingly. And it does get a point when he when he has anger, and I'm sure the tone of his voice when he spoke those last words, communicated that. But that was, at objection number 5 or 6. I mean, God could have just shut him down in the moment ago and said, just don't question it, do it. But he was willing, as you said so well, to give evidence, to give reassurance, to address the concerns that the chosen one had, so that they could hopefully find confidence in God, and then with that resolve to do what God said. Excellent. Other thoughts? Yes, sir.
I had on Moses' experience here at the church. I think I started with the visitations to the VA hospital, and Pastor Ed maybe saw that, but we had an issue with Sam Green. Remember when that happened? They had to change the group leader of the older people. Now, I had I born and raised Roman Catholic, so I was transitioning from Catholic faith and letting go purgatory and some of the other stuff.
Okay.
So he said, I need you to go and lead the oldest group. And I remember Jackie McMurray, she knew the Bible inside and out. And I'm going to go in there.
She was the Joe to your Sharon, huh? Is that it?
I did. And I said, are you sure you want me to do this? And each week I kept saying, you sure, God, you want me to do this now? 25 years later, I'm leading the older people.
Cool. Amen. Yeah, and it took a courageous step of faith to begin, and the path continued. Really good. Other thoughts? You had a hand. Yes, sir.
I don't think any of us in here have ever required to have leprosy to change our minds, to reassure us.
Right.
And I would credit that to God's putting Jesus, his son, on the earth as a living example that we can believe in. It's much Moses had a problem. He didn't have Jesus. It was this voice.
Because that was a promised Messiah, not a past account that we can look at.
I mean,
yeah.
Timing, it's just a matter of timing and God's timing.
Sure.
But now we have all of the writings of the New Testament, all of the work that Jesus did through God as his spokesman, is Moses.
Yeah. This.
Yeah.
Amen. Well said.
So it's a lot easier for us, I think, because we can grasp Jesus as opposed to a burning bush.
Well said. And all of us have access to Jesus versus a burning bush.
People still don't believe it. It's still ongoing.
Despite the resources, yeah.
And then we didn't finish, we finished God's statement. We were talking to what Rhonda was saying, surrender. Verse 18, he's like, well, I'm going back to Jethro. I'm telling him I'm going to Egypt. I got to do whatever God's told me.
Yeah, he does. He finally does fall on step, and he does it quite well, as we know. Yes, indeed. Let me hit a couple of the talking points. These were great. I know we're probably, I want to be sure you have your 10 minutes here. So let me hit a couple others that I thought of that were kind of general takeaways. Again, God selects the leaders. Second one, our feelings of inadequacy are immaterial. Our feelings of inadequacy are immaterial. Second, the great I Am promises to be with us when we lead at his calling. If God has dispatched us, it's not to go on our own and hope we do well. It's to walk alongside of us and to be the I Am when we're dealing with our neighbor or whomever else. That we will develop skills and talents to enhance our leading after we start leading. This is the adage that more often than not, God equips those he has called, rather than calling those who are already equipped. So Moses had inadequacies, and some of them were legitimate, and God was able to work through that and provide Aaron, but in the end it was God using Moses' voice to speak to Pharaoh, not Aaron's. And Moses got equipped after the call, after he began, after he went to Jethro and said, I'm out of here because God told me to. Often God will bolster our capacity to lead by bringing others to share the load. That would be the Aaron example. And perhaps most importantly, you can end well even if you start poorly, but you have to start. That's a takeaway from Moses' life. All right, with that, let me go ahead and close us in prayer and let you have your 10 minutes in this room. God, we thank you for Moses' leadership. We thank you for what the account demonstrates. Lots of things, your tolerance, your patience, your sovereignty, the wisdom of your choice even when we think otherwise, Lord, and the sufficiency of your presence in that task. I ask as we look at the opportunities we have already had or prepare for the opportunities you will provide for us to be selected to do some task that we find daunting and intimidating and would be inclined to raise issues of protest like Moses did, Lord, that you would help us to overcome those, that you would help us to dispatch those, help us to rely on you, to trust you, and to have the faith to lead when you call. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.